Hello. Hello, police. Yeah, what's the problem, sir? We just drove down our farm track. Yeah. Go and feed our pheasants. We come across a Range Rover with 3 people in it. Yeah. It appears that they're dead. I don't know what's happening. Blood in the motor all over them.
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. On the 4th of December, Pat Tate was planning a quiet night in with Liz. She called up the London Pizza Company in Basildon and asked a 21-year-old manager, Roger Ryle, for a pizza with different toppings on each quarter. Ryle told her that would not be possible. Suddenly, Tate grabbed the phone. "You will deliver the pizza I want, or I'll come round and get it." "I wasn't going to take that," Ryle said later. So I said to him, "Get rid of the attitude and I'll send you a pizza." "What's your fucking name?" screamed Tate. That made him worse and he slammed the phone down. Half an hour later, Tate turned up. "Who's Roger?" When Ryle put his hand up, Tate picked up the till and threw it at him. Ryle quickly backed out of the office and pushed the panic button as Tate vaulted the counter and rushed towards him. He punched me in the face, then smashed my head up and down on the glass plate on the draining board. Blood streamed out of a wound in his head. Tate warned him not to call the police or he would return and smash the place up and beat up all the staff. But it was too late. The panic button brought officers and Tate was traced to his home in Basildon. At first, Ryle, who had concussion, was determined to have the man who assaulted him brought to justice. But as friends and colleagues told him more about Pat Tate's reputation and that of the firm that he belonged to, Ryle's resolve softened. By the following morning he had withdrawn his statement and decided not to press charges. Within the space of a few hours, the incident had become legend across South East Essex. For some, it was a testimony to Pat's increasing arrogance and influence that he could commit such a public crime and get away with it. There was a time when his strength, his wit and charm made him a valuable asset to any. But now, that was in the past. There was only one way to describe Pat Tate now: a liability. Darren Nicholls states, "All day long I've been dying for a beer. I'd got this new contract working on a site down by Heathrow Airport, which was paying good money, but meant getting up at 5 in the morning and driving more than 100 miles. We finished quite early, and I'd normally be home by 6, but the days were still pretty exhausting. After a long, hard day, the only way I can unwind is to go down the pub for a few pints. Most of the time that was okay, but every now and then Sandra would kick up a fuss and have a go at me for not spending enough time with her and the kids. When that happened, I'd stay in for a couple of nights and make sure I got in the way. Then she'd be practically begging me to go down the pub, just so she could have some peace and quiet. I've been a good boy for the past 2 nights, even helping out with housework and stuff like that. And now, I was going to get my reward. I was going to go down my local, have a couple of games of pool and get completely and utterly plastered. At around 2 PM, just as I was finishing up for the day, Mick called my mobile and asked me to meet him at Mark's Tate as soon as possible. It was a place we've met a few times before because it's roughly halfway between our 2 houses. But it meant a detour on the way home and therefore a delay in getting the beers in. Mick didn't say why he wanted to meet, so I assumed it was something to do with drugs. Either another run he wanted me to go on or some new stock he wanted me to sell. I was really tempted to say I couldn't make it, but I didn't want to let him down. I'd been doing a lot of work on his house during the evening and at weekends, and I didn't want to risk losing the extra income. At first I said I'd meet him at 4 PM, but then I changed it to 5 PM, because that way I knew I'd have time for a couple of quick beers on the way. At that exact time, in a quiet corner of the TGI Fridays at the Lakeside Shopping Centre in Thurrock, Tate, Tucker and Rolfe were deep in discussion. The initial plan could not have been more straightforward. They had agreed with Steele that they would be hiding in some bushes when the plane landed, leap out, fire a few shots into the air to scare the pilot, and then take away the 30 kilos of pure, unadulterated Charlie. To make it look good and ensure that no one suspected it was an inside job, they'd have to threaten Steele as well, maybe even tie him up for a while. But it would all be play acting. The firm would leave with all the drugs and meet up with Steele a couple of days later to divide it all up. But now the plan had changed. As far as Tate was concerned, he explained to the others, Mickey Steele was guilty of having tried to rip the firm off with the dodgy cannabis. Okay, so he had eventually paid the money back, but he had still caused them a huge amount of grief. And now, it was payback time. Rather than handing over 10 kilos of pure cocaine, they would give Steele just 3 kilos of the good stuff, mixed with a load of impurities such as caffeine or chalk dust to make it up to the full weight. That would leave the firm with 27 kilos of premium quality Bolivian marching powder between them. Tate had already discussed a price with a certain John McCarthy, a man well used to dealing in large amounts of the white stuff, and the quote that came back was one of those magical numbers that whether you're a pop star, a merchant banker, or just a gangster, announces to the world that you have most definitely arrived. McCarthy was going to pay the firm a cool £1 million. Steele had apparently already been paid his fee for flying the plane, and the drugs were packed up and standing by to be collected in Holland. The only delay to the deal was the snow on the ground, which Steele explained made landing in such a small space too hazardous, even for a pilot as skilled as he was. But the firm regarded the money as good as theirs. To celebrate, they had booked a table for that same evening at the Global Net Cafe in Romford, where along with their girlfriends they would toast their soon-to-be stinking rich status. Donna Jaggers was also just finishing work for the day when Craig Rolfe called her. It was around 3 p.m, and I was just getting ready to leave work when he phoned. He said that Mickey the pilot had been in touch earlier in the day and wanted to meet Tucker and Tate that evening to show them where he was going to land the plane. Craig was really excited that the deal was getting so imminent. He wanted me to wear something new at the mill that evening, so he said he'd take me to the Lakeside shopping centre, go off to see the airstrip and then come back and pick me up. I met him at home an hour or so later, and he told me for the first time about the change in the plans and how they were going to rip Mickey off. As Craig explained what was going on, I was getting more and more worried, and I told him that I didn't want him to have any part in it. He told me that they were only going to look at a field, that Mickey didn't know he was going to be driving, and that he wasn't nearly as heavily involved in what was going on as the other two were. But mostly, he told me about the money. He said that for once, he would have enough money to enable us to go ahead with whatever plans we wanted. We'd be able to live anywhere and do nothing all day. Visit anywhere in the world. It would be the life we always dreamed of. I realised there was no way I was going to be able to talk him out of it, even though I didn't want him to go through with it. It was obvious he was just in too deep. As Rolfe dropped her off at the shopping centre, Jaggers tried one last time to talk him out of going to the rendezvous, but his mind was made up. He said to me, if I don't go, then Tony can turn around later when the drugs come in and say I didn't have anything to do with the arrangements, so my cut will be smaller. I don't want that to happen. I've got to do my bit. I've got to play my part. And then he left. As he approached the outskirts of Mark's Tay, Darren Nicholls was beginning to realise that stopping off for a beer on the way had been a terrible mistake. Darren Nicholls states, "He had really given me a taste for it, but I hadn't had anywhere near enough. I'd only teased my taste buds. As I parked up, I started hoping that whatever it was that Mick wanted, it wouldn't take too long so I could get home and get on with some serious drinking. After a few minutes, I saw a familiar red Hilux pull up and went over and got in the passenger side. Mick started telling me that he and Pat had finally sorted their differences out and that he was planning to meet him that evening. Apparently a plane with a mother load of cocaine was going to be landing in some field and they were going to meet it for some kind of deal. Sounds good, I said. So what do you want me to do? Mick explained that my role was to drive Jack to the meeting place and then pick the two of them up afterwards. I want Pat to think that I'm meeting him on my own, he told me. Now this is the point in the story where people start saying to me, didn't you think it was all a bit odd? Weren't there alarm bells ringing in your head? The answer I'm afraid to say is no. As far as I was concerned, there was some kind of deal going on between Pat and Mick. I knew by then Pat was a bit of a loose cannon, especially after the pizza incident, and was not adverse to ripping people off, even his friends. Now it was unlikely he'd try anything with Mick, but if it was me, I would have played it the same way. Rather than going down to the meet with all the money, I'd have someone else holding it nearby to make sure it wasn't a trap. It was exactly the same deal that I'd pulled when I was trying to sell that counterfeit money at the hotel. It was standard underworld practice. I didn't see anything wrong with it at all. You've been listening to Blogs 19, written by Tony Thompson. This book is available to purchase online at Amazon and other online book retailers. Many thanks for joining me for this video. Very shortly you'll be able to see some other videos from the channel, including the Essex Boys playlist, which has all of the videos concerning this case in one convenient folder. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I look forward to seeing you all again in the next video. Take care. Cheers.